Shalom, dear friends. Havarim, we say in Israel in Hebrew. My name is Devorah Kalik, and I'm with Bless Israel Network. And I would like to welcome you today to a special series that we're going to be doing that's part of Heartbeat of the Torah. But this series is not exactly on the Torah portion. And I want to share with you something extremely important that I've come to understand. And so I want to share it with all of you, with our friends, and help us to understand our identity. Now, this may seem like, oh, it's simple, our identity is in Messiah, but there's much, much more to it that I've learned in the last few years. And so I want to do a special series and share with you some of the things that I have learned. And it really is very important to understand who we are and what we are grafted into. All of us talk about being grafted into the nation of Israel and part through the Messiah and part of the greater Israel, if you will, because of course it's not just Israel, does not just refer to the actual physical nation of Israel where I live. So I want to talk to you about this today. And we're going to start with a little bit of an introduction. So I'm calling this series Our Identity Crisis, Lost and Found. And it will be several parts. I'm not sure exactly how many it will be, but I'll try to make them relatively short so that you can think about it, and I'll try to provide material for you to look up, etc. So you can study this a bit more yourself. Well, let's get started. I want to suggest to you, actually propose to you, I'm making a statement that I believe is very true, that we have a major identity crisis within the entire believing body of Messiah, of Jesus, and by the way, instead of Christ, I say Messiah. I'm referring to the actual Jewish term. And instead of Jesus, I call him Yeshua, just in case some of you are new. I'll try to explain any other terms that might not be known. Well, as I was saying, this identity crisis actually, I believe, exists on both sides of the fence. What do I mean by that? I mean on the Jewish side and the Gentile side, or the non-Jewish side. It's in the church and it's in Messianic congregations. It's manifest among all of the believers in the USA, in the West. It's manifested in Israel. It's showing its head, if you will, all over the world, in brothers and sisters all over the world. And sadly, I want to say it's even apparent within the body of Messiah here in Israel. This is part of the reason the Bless Israel Network exists. We feel God has called us on a mission to raise up Zion before the nations. Many of you who have been following us know that that is our mission and our byline, if you will. And so in order to fulfill that mission, we have a flagship program called Revelation to the Nations, where we're bringing you here from Zion the Messianic leaders of congregations and ministries and how they're building the kingdom. Now, on that show, we don't focus on theology. We focus more on the work that's being done to build the kingdom in Israel, and specifically the humanitarian aid that's being done among the brethren here in Israel to build the kingdom. We have a couple of other programs that do deal more with theological and teaching issues. Heartbeat of the Torah, Lev HaTorah, which is what this is today. And then I do something called a Taste of Torah, which is kind of Torah light, if you will. Well, back to what I was saying. This portion of Lev HaTorah is a little bit more theological in nature, and our goal is to educate you to come back and to return to the true Jewish meaning of the scriptures, both the Tanakh, the Old Testament, and the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament, and the teachings of Yeshua, and put all of that back into a Jewish context. So back to what I was saying. Where does our worldview come from? I want to talk a little bit about that right now. We're going to ask you, or I'm going to ask you today, lovingly, to be willing to take off your American or your Western glasses, wherever you are. And we're going to even ask you to take off your Christian glasses for a little bit. What do I mean by that? We all have a worldview, a hashkafa in Hebrew, with which we approach everything, even our understanding of the scriptures. In America and in most of the Western countries, we have what's called a Western worldview. And that involves a lot of different things, which I'm not going to get into, but it's important. I want to submit to you today that our Christian glasses are tainted by this Western worldview. So I hope you're still with me. I'm suggesting that this is very difficult to say because I don't want to offend anybody, but we need to understand where our Western worldview came from. And it comes from primarily two places: the Greek and Roman world. We have a Western worldview that's been greatly impacted and affected by Greece and Rome, ancient Greece and Rome. So I'm actually going to ask you to take off what I call your Greco-Roman glasses in just a moment. And when you do that, you're going to hear things you haven't heard before, perhaps. That's okay. We had never heard these things before either when we first started learning about this. And after all, if we are truly after God's heart and truly want to be his people, in the way that Yeshua presented it to us and the way our Messiah presented it to us, we should be flexible and willing to learn new things and listen and to things that might deepen our relationship with God and our understanding of what he's actually commanded us to do. Right? True? Nachon, we say in Hebrew. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to do something. Let's take off our Greco-Roman glasses. And there's one more thing that we need to do that I forgot to mention to you. Taking off our Greco-Roman glasses means we need to open our minds to receive some new information. Are we together on this? I hope so. So, okay, are you ready to put on your new glasses? Okay, here we go. These are Jewish glasses. Hi, honey. That's my husband, Daniel. So we're putting on Jewish glasses today. I hope you're going to stick with me. Our identity, I can't see through those glasses, so I have to put it back on my regular glasses. Our identity crisis, that was a fun way of saying that our identity crisis is preventing the unity of the body of Messiah. Today, we're going to talk about who we are and how we can be the answer to Yeshua's prayer that he prayed in John 17. Two-house, Ephraimite, sacred name movement, calendar issues, all of these divisions within the body of Messiah. I'll put replacement theology in there, and the belief that Yeshua abandoned the Torah and that we don't have to keep it anymore. All of these things, all these divisions and disputes are keeping the body of Messiah from being unified, and they prove, they are evidence that we have a very severe identity crisis. Each movement within the body of Messiah are accusing the others of being in error. Each declares that they uniquely hold the truth, and anyone who's not practicing whatever truth they claim is in sin. I mean, this is extreme thinking. And may I just say, it's arrogant and it's sinful. This attitude is not the demeanor we are to have with one another. I'm making an assumption here that most of the people I'm talking to today believe in Yeshua with all their heart as the Messiah, and they are following him to the best of their ability. Listen, Daniel and I always say this: no one, and I mean no one, who is alive today has 100% correct theology. How can I say that? Well, because we're all still works in process. We're all still learning what it means to love the Messiah, to follow him with all of our hearts, and to display, to reveal God, the God of Israel, to the world. We're all still learning how to do this. None of us understand this perfectly because we've been separated from the truth for about 1700 years. And so we're all grappling and trying to understand what this life of discipleship, what this life of following Yeshua really means. Well, I hope this series is going to help to clarify. I'm not saying I know everything. Daniel and I would never say that. We're still learning. We're still students. And we're learning from people who are further ahead in this than we are. And as we learn from them, we want to lovingly share with you, with our followers, with our, not personally followers, but the people who are following our ministry. Okay, back to what I was saying. These factions further isolate themselves from the wider body of Yeshua, of the body of Messiah, causing division rather than unity, as our Master and our Messiah prayed for in John 17. This is, as I mentioned, is going to be a multiple part series, and because there's way too much information to cover in one video. So I want to, in this teaching, we're going to try to answer some questions, some important questions, and I'm going to list them now. Who are we? Where or with whom do we belong? Meaning, who should we be in fellowship with, and things like that. What, or who rather, are we following? What is the context of our faith and our practice? What does it mean to be grafted in to the greater commonwealth of Israel, the olive tree, which is Israel? Well, we're going to explain in a later part the Rabbi Shaul or Paul's midrash on roots and branches and what that means, because he taught that in a Jewish context. He was a rabbi, he was a Pharisee, and he had been to Gamliel, yeshiva, discipleship school, if you will. And this means something specific in a Jewish context. What does it mean to have a circumcised heart? AKA, what does it mean to have a Jewish soul? What is the original Besorah, the original gospel, the original good news? And then we'll have a conclusion. So those are the main questions we're going to be answering. And I want to start with, who are we? For simplicity's sake, all of mankind is divided into two groups or categories, if you will. Jews and non-Jews. Another word for non-Jew is, or non-Jewish person, is a Gentile. The word Gentile is not a bad word. it has come to have a negative connotation among the Jewish people. But when we use the term Gentile, all we're saying is someone who is not physically Jewish. They are not born of a Jewish mother or Jewish parents, and they live in the nations. You know, they're part of the nations, ethnically, physically. Okay, I'm not talking about spiritual. I'm talking about ethnic, physical. Okay, so 2 groups of people, Jews and non-Jews. We are either Jewish, born Jewish, as I said, born of the natural born seed of Abraham, or we're born non-Jewish. We're not of the natural seed of Abraham, meaning a Gentile means of the nations. Okay, in the physical realm, Jews are considered to be the physical descendants of Abraham. Gentiles are those who are not the physical seed of Abraham. That's it. All humanity is divided into these 2 groups. It's the way it is. It's not good or bad at this point. It's just how it is. Therefore, believers or followers of the Jewish Messiah are either physically and ethnically Jewish, or they are physically and ethnically of the nations and therefore are non-Jews or Gentiles. That's the simple definition that we're using. Now, there are spiritual definitions to these things too, but right now we're only talking about physical. Okay, question number 2. Where or with whom do we belong? The answer, according to Rabbi Shaul, or Paul, I'll usually call him Shaul, okay, but you know I mean Paul. We Gentiles, we non-Jews, are grafted into Israel, and we are connected to Israel. What does that mean? Well, Shaul teaches us a midrash explaining our main identity in Romans 11. He says, Jews are the natural, physical branches of a tree. It's a cultivated olive tree representing Israel. Physically speaking, since they are descendants of Abraham, who renounced idolatry, and Abraham became the first Jew. He renounced idolatry. He came out of a Babylonian religion that Nimrod was the king. He came out of that, and he came to believe he left idolatry, came to believe in the one true God, and was circumcised and effectively became the first Jew. His descendants, so Abraham is the first Jew, and his descendants are branches of their own cultivated olive tree, meaning Israel. Gentiles are branches of a wild olive tree, which, by the way, wild olive trees don't produce edible fruit. There might be some fruit on them, but basically they don't produce fruit. The cultivated olive tree produces fruit. Jews who did not believe in Yeshua as the Messiah are referred to by Shaul as branches that were cut off their original tree, their cultivated tree by God. But those who believed were grafted back in. Okay, they were grafted back into the cultivated olive tree of Israel. Now, it could be that they never stopped believing, so they never were cut off. So that's a possibility too. He doesn't really go into that in the Midrash. Now, okay, so we're here we are. Gentiles who believed were cut off of their natural wild tree and were grafted into the cultivated tree of Israel. And then as the branches, the natural branches of Abraham either came to believe or had always believed, they were either grafted back into the cultivated tree or they remained as a branch on the cultivated tree, which Shaul calls Israel. So the tree has both Jewish and non-Jewish branches now. We know that being part of Israel means a lot more than something that is physical. Shaul is giving a spiritual picture here. And we're going to learn a little bit more about that when I talk about that question about talk about grafting in. What is it? What does it mean? When I share some background information to this midrash that he did in Romans 11 on roots and branches. So we are going to be talking about this more later. But for now, let's leave it at that. And that midrash has to do with having a Jewish soul, something, and a circumcised heart. That's something I alluded to. Okay, on to the last question we're going to cover today. Who or what or who are we following? The answer is a who. We are following Yeshua. We are following the Jewish Messiah. But it could be also said that we're following the apostles, the disciples of Yeshua, as they followed Yeshua. At the same time, all Jewish believers who followed the Messiah understood they were walking in the footsteps of Abraham. This is something extremely important that has been acknowledged in Christianity and in the Messianic movement, but I don't believe most people really understand what that means. I have only begun to get a better understanding of this as I've been a student of Rabbi Itzhak Shapira in Shuvu and in the discipleship school that I'm a part of. And so anyway, I'll just tell you, since I mentioned Shuvu, you can go to www.shuvu.tv if you're interested in finding out more about learning more in depth about the true context of your faith and what it means to be a discipleship of Yeshua. Some of which I'm sharing what I've learned in a course called Ohel Avraham from Rabbi Italki. This is what I'm sharing with you today. So, back to what I was saying. All Jews who came to believe, when Yeshua walked the earth, who came to believe in him as the Messiah, knew and understood they were walking in the footsteps of Abraham. And this is something we need to reclaim. The church, Christianity, needs to get a deep understanding of this. Actually, everybody does who doesn't understand it. Okay, through the Messiah, the blessing of Abraham has come upon the Gentiles, according to Galatians 3:14, meaning we have entered into a covenant relationship with the God of Israel through the Messiah. Ephesians 2:11 tells us, we who are not Jewish were once separated from the Messiah, we were alienated from Israel, and we were idolaters. That's what it means when he says strangers. The word there is a zar, an idolater, as opposed to a ger, who is someone like me and like those of us who are non-Jewish, who have drawn close to Israel and are learning the Jewish roots of our faith and returning to the Jewish context of our faith. Okay, so Ephesians 2:11 again tells us that we were not Jewish, were once separated from the Messiah, alienated from Israel, we were idolaters without the covenants, we were far away from God, without hope, and without the possibility of knowing him. I tell you, when I look at this scripture again, I am so grateful that Yeshua made it possible. The Messiah of Israel made it possible for us who are not Jewish to come close to God. So anyway, just want to say that because we were lost. We were without hope. No way, no how could we come in. Okay. Now, then Shaul goes on to say, through the blood of Messiah, those of us who were alienated and idolaters and without hope have been brought near to God. This is the word in Hebrew, Corban, to be brought near. Though he was not a literal temple sacrifice, it's not what he was. It's a picture, it's a metaphor that he was like a temple sacrifice. But God doesn't believe in human sacrifice, so he wasn't an actual literal physical sacrifice. But what he did, he offered up his life. He offered it up his life. He was an offering. He becomes a Corban to God. And the purpose of that was to bring us who were far away, at a distance, way far away, without hope, so we could come near to God. Now, Shaul tells us also that peace has been made for us through this offering of the Messiah. He was a righteous man, a tzaddik, who suffered for the sins of his people and for the whole world, making it possible for us to draw near and come near and know the God of Israel and be partakers of the covenant. More of that in a minute. So, through the death and resurrection of the Messiah, his Corban, we have been invited to become partners with God. The word in Hebrew is shutfut. We have been invited. An offering, a wonderful offering has been given to us, a wonderful blessing to come near, to join with the Jewish people, to become part of them. We've been invited to become partners with God just as the Jewish people are in partnership with him through the covenants. We are in partnership through and with the Messiah, also to glorify God, meaning to reveal his presence to the people in the world, wherever we live, those around us, where we work, where we play, where we, our neighbors, etc., etc. You know what I'm saying. Yeshua, as a good Jew, actually told us how to do this. Wow, amazing. It's right in the Bible for us. Here's what he says. And actually, he told us in slightly different words, but the same intention, the same meaning. He told us the exact same thing that the children of Israel were told on Mount Sinai. Here's what he said. Basically, he said, obey my commandments. And here's how he said it. He said this in Matthew 5. Let your light so shine before men that they will see your good deeds, meaning the commandments or the mitzvot, and because of what they see in you, they will glorify your Father who is in heaven. This is code, my friends. This is Jewish code. We have to learn to speak Jewish code. We have to learn to understand the Hebraic ideas behind his words. He said, when we do this, they will look at you, they will see me, the Messiah, and they will want to become like you, loving my Father and your Father who is in heaven. They will want to glorify him. They will want to do the same thing that we're doing. They'll want to become disciples of Yeshua, of the Messiah, and learn how to do what we are doing. Hello? Are you listening to this, my friends? We have sadly missed the mission. I'm not saying everybody. I'm just saying the evidence is that the world is in chaos. It's a mess like it was before God created everything. It was a mess. And we are to be the antidote to the chaos. Now I'm going to talk about this a little bit more, but this is it's simple, but it's not easy to do. Now, let me just say, because I'm running out of time, when we live like the Messiah lived, people will take notice. When we're bringing his light into the darkness, people will see. And these people, if we build relationships with them, if we invite them into our homes, if we care about their problems and show them how to overcome them, if we serve, love, and encourage them and teach them about God, which is basically obeying the commandments that he taught us, then the power of God will come to us. The blessing of God will come to us, and others will see what we have done. Moses put it this way in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verses 6 through 8. Keep them, the commandments, and do them. And for that will be your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples, who when they hear all these statutes will say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. So, who are we to be with? Who are we to associate with? Who are we to spend our time with? Shaul said it this way: follow my example as I follow the Messiah. And he said a lot more things, which I'm going to have to close because this is getting past 30 minutes. And I will share them with you next time. Please consider, if this has been a blessing for you, please consider partnering with Bless Israel Network. Go to www.blessisraelnetwork.com, click on the donate tab, and you can make a tax-deductible donation to our ministry, which will help us to produce this program and our flagship program, Revelation to the Nations. Join us as we raise up Zion before the nations. Litraot, until next time, my friends.